Oh, girl, I'll be in trouble if you left me now. I don't know where to look for love. I just don't know how. Oh, girl, I could depend on you to give me love. All right, all right. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody who's watching live on RBN. So good to see you. Welcome to the JB Show. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. It is so good to see all of you here on this afternoon on August 21st, 2022. A beautiful and bright sunny Sunday today. Just to let you guys know that the JB Show streams every single Sunday at 1 p.m. on RBN. So also, you can catch me on the RBN Live on Tuesdays at 4, and you can catch me on the Sabby and JB Show on Thursdays at 6. I also have my own channel called the JB Font Channel. You can also subscribe to there if you would like. Just follow the link, not link, but just go to JB Font, and then you'll find me, and I'm there. So it's good to see all of you here. To all of you who are watching who are new, if you have not yet, please click the subscribe button. Just that little red button down there, and then you can subscribe. Also, click the link bell just to notify you whenever we do go live. And if you haven't already, give the stream a like if you like what you're hearing. So, of course, I would just like to say my salutations to everyone in the chat that are watching. And hello to all of you for joining me. As per usual, it is always good to see you. Pierce Force are coming is in the chat. Says you can see the exuberance of that cop as he smashes in someone's door. Simply disgusting. Absolutely. We're going to be getting into talking about evictions and things like that. So it's going to be very important. So I appreciate that. We also have Rebecca Chambers saying, I used to believe that, but now I inherited property. And now I'm a landlord myself, and I cannot wait to jack up prices 10 to 20 times that of which a person makes in a month. So I can make so much. Because if you ask for 4 or 10 times a month pay, you're going to get it because it just magically works like that. I want money, so give it to me. It's the landlord's philosophy. Thank you very much. And Rebecca continues, says, also, I think your question isn't really appropriate because half of the people who don't see the increase are probably unlucky enough to be on some type of Section 8 where they can't raise it. Section 8, it's on a from last time I checked, there's on a 5-year waiting list. Or no longer taking any applications, and people just aren't really going on it like they used to. And plus, there's a lot of government cuts, things like that. So, yeah, a lot of people are just suffering. We're just gritting our teeth and paying the rent. So, I think my question was appropriate, but I guess we agreed to disagree. Aspen Fallen is in the chat saying, as a homeowner, my taxes went up, but not my base payment since I have a conventional loan. Thank you so much for that. Who else do we have in the chat? Thank you so much, Hallie Horn, for being in the chat saying housing is a right. Thank you so very much. Janice Anderson's in the chat as well. It says, I don't rent, my property taxes went up. Okay, thank you so much for that. Eric Gray is also in the chat. What up, everybody? And yeah, living in Florida is a very interesting experience indeed. Yeah, telling me about it. Credit is Born says, 2 word, the vested interests are terrified of. Land reform. Thank you so very much for that. Appreciate it. Paul is in the chat, says, my rent hasn't increased, but I live in a literal slum hole and I've started working with a tenants union as a result. Wow. Wow. And Paul continues, says, I can't afford to move out. There is a rub, eh? Yeah, definitely. E. Rogel says, I pay property taxes and mortgage. I'm rich. Okay. All right. Christian is also in the chat saying the beautiful voice. Thank you. Mm. The tea is delicious this morning. All right. You see, Septien says my pop's rent has increased. He said it went up $250. It's a lot of people that are saying the same thing. Where Pilgrim is in the chat saying, "Hey everybody, good to see you, Where Pilgrim, as always." All right. Let me see. Rock Bottom is saying, "I knew JB was going to kick it off with a banger." Yup, you got to kick it off, man. We got to kick it off right. All right, Red is in the chat saying landlord says she wanted to raise it 20%, but accepted my offer of 10% as a split. I guess that was just a good deal. Gosh, that's crazy, man. Randy says, "Hello, JB. Hi, everyone. So good to see you as always, Randy." Paul also says, most of my friends have had large rent increases and or are struggling with rent, and that's with theoretically rent controls in my city. Yeah, so I would love to talk about that as well. Nick, my homeboy, is in the chat. So good to see Nick in the chat as well. All right, bro. Actually, now that you're watching, Nick, I just want to let you know one of the news reports I'm going to be looking at. Uh, uh, one of the people from KC Tenants was actually interviewed in there, so it's going to be good. And if you want to jump in on the stream, I'm not going to stop you. Just letting you know. All right, let me see who else is in the chat as well. Let me see. Zach Davis says, "JB, how you doing, my brother?" I'm good. I'm all right. I am. This story got me kind of somber. Because people are going through exactly what I'm going through. And this is something you're not going to get on a lot of independent commentators channels, when they may talk about the pain of people and their rent going up and their cost of living going up, and they're being barely able to afford it. But how are they doing, right? Like, how are the people who are reporting to you what's going on doing? I can tell you this much. I'm literally suffering right now. So I am literally with you on this one. So this is somebody who's going through what you're going through, that's talking to you about what we're going through, so that people who don't know, they can actually know from an actual, perspective from a person who's actually going through it. So yeah. Optimism of the Will. So good to see you, and giving out a shout out to Nick. So good. Brandy Weaver is in the chat. Said, "I'm fortunate enough that we own our home, so I don't rent. That was the reason for my no vote." I got you. Thank you so much, Brandy. Appreciate it, though. All right. Who else is new in the chat? Do we have anybody else that I haven't got to say hello to? All right. Charles K is also in the chat. Says, own my apartment, so cannot participate in your survey." Okay, well, thank you so very much. All right. Google Pig says, "Outlaw real estate investment based." You see. Sweary Fairy is also in the chat. Hey, bestie. So good to see you as well. Togonzo says, "My rent from 2017 to 2022 is 550 to 735 in a 5-year span." Wow. Ooh, yikes. Gene is in the chat. "So good to see you. I put no in the poll because my county, we have national rent control." I wish. Wow. Yeah. And rent barely went up. Gosh, man, that's crazy. Extra Booyah is in the chat. So good to see you, Uncle Warren, as always. My heart is always with you, Uncle Warren. Roman Smith says, "Soon we will all be paying back rent to BlackRock." Unfortunately, yeah, because BlackRock is buying up all out of the rent around the country. Let me see. Kevin is in the chat saying cheap rent available almost nowhere. Mm-mm-mm. Wow. So I'm going to do a couple more and then we are going to get started. Bob K says, poll, yes, rent increased $200 a month by $200 a month last month. Yeah, that, oof, it is crazy, man. Crazy how people's rent is continuously going up. George says, my landlord wanted to raise my rent 30%. I said, no thanks. He accepted it graciously. I am one of his 10 tenants who isn't 2 years behind. Landlords do not have leverage. They're faking it. Interesting. All right. Zach Davis says, I am on the other side of that. I had to live with my family to survive, 4 of us in a house. Depending on how many rooms the house has, I mean, that could be a precarious situation. Definitely. So I hope you're at least kind of comfortable, like have your own room. But even still, I mean, it's still, a lot. James Russell says, solidarity. So good to see you. Daryl Lawrence. So good to see you in the chat as well. All right. So the rent is too damn high. Do you agree with that statement? Do you think that the rent is too damn high? Those of you in the chat, people who are watching later in the comments, what do you think? You think the rent's too damn high? According to the super rich, no. According to all of us, yeah, the rent's too damn high. And one of the things that I wanted to discuss was that the rent has went up so much to the point where it made the local news many times. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. And we're going to get into this because, and I'm going to tell you guys my personal experience of what happened so that you guys can know what happened with me and why I can say that I understand exactly what's going on and I'm feeling it right now too. So, but I'll meet you guys on the other side.
If you're renting a home or apartment in Central Florida, you've probably noticed it. The monthly cost is exploding. Orlando is one of the top 3 cities with the biggest spike. Experts say there may be no end in sight. Fox 35.
Just to let you guys know, I live in Orlando. So when I say I know the pain, I know the pain. All right, let's keep going.
As Lydia Hugh has the details.
The nationwide surge on rent prices is forcing renters to dig deeper into their pockets to help them find or maintain housing as the federal moratorium on evictions has now ended. The median rent price across the country has risen by more than 19% over a year ago to reach $1,789. But
now, $1,789. Now, experts, especially those who are housing experts, typically say that you need to make at least 3 times the rent, 3 times the rent in order, to have that as, sufficiently, your income needs to be 3 times greater than that of the rent, right? All right, so pulling out my calculator, okay? Let's get it on. Let's watch. 1789 times 3, which is 5,367, right? Okay, so if you're working realistically, everybody talks about working, uh, 40 hours a week, right? If you have a job and you're making 40 hours a week full time, which isn't everybody, because sometimes some people may work full time, they may work 37, 36, 35 hours a week, but for the sake of ease, we're going to say 40 hours a week. So 40 hours a week, four weeks in a month, that's going to be 160 hours. So 5,637 divided by 160, which is basically 160 hours a month, comes out to $33.54 an hour. So 33.5 cents an hour you need to make in order to afford rent in this country. What is the what is the federal minimum wage in this country? Anybody? Anybody? $7.25 an hour. $7.25 an hour is the federal minimum wage, right? Median rent in the United States, and we're not talking about the highest rents in places like Hawaii, Chicago, New York City, and places in California. We're not talking about, or in Massachusetts. We're not talking about those states, where it goes way higher than that. We're just talking about just the median rent. You need to make basically $34 an hour in order to afford that. And it's crazy how people will sit there and say, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. And it's like, with what boots? With what boots? $1,789 a month on rent, right? Some of y'all in places like especially like Southern California, New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, some of y'all are seeing, $2,500, $3,000. Some of y'all are seeing those prices. And people, when we say that we need a living wage, people balk at $15 an hour. Number one, I no longer stand for $15 an hour being the minimum wage. I think that it should be equal to that of what we have as far as the cost of living. So if in an area, let's say for instance, you live in an area that's $1,789. That's the average rent for, let's say, a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom, right? So if that area, then really the minimum wage, should, be $34 an hour. And then a lot of times people will go, well, what about the small businesses that they can't afford that? I agree. And small businesses should be subsidized. Subsidize small businesses. And also, there should be an encouragement to small businesses to give employee ownership to the company so that it's worker owned. But that's my thing. And so for people to have to struggle, and I'll say this, it is not your fault that you're struggling. Everybody wants to talk about, oh, it's your responsibility to make enough. It's like, that's relative, not absolute. Person already gets up, they already go to work, they already put in labor, they do the best that they possibly can. If the system doesn't allow it, then therefore it is a systemic problem, not an individual one. That's something that a lot of people don't get, is that we are literally watching a systemic issue happen. You cannot sit here and tell me that the hundreds of thousands and millions of people that are suffering right now are suffering because they're just lazy, or they just don't have the ingenuity, or they just don't have the ambition or the drive to make it. How many of these people that are suffering literally did all the right things that we were told? A lot of us that are millennial, we were told to do the right thing. We were told, go to college, get yourself a good job, do all these different things, and then you're good. Guess what? We're not good. Go ahead. Ask some of us who are millennial and Gen X. We're not okay. Hell, even boomers, some boomers are not okay. They're not okay. Gen Z, they're not okay. None of us are okay. And some of us who were okay maybe 7, 8 years ago, we're not okay anymore. We're not. And the thing is that people need to realize that it's not on us, it's on the system. All right, let's continue, man. Get off my soapbox.
There are some cities, particularly in the Sun Belt region, that are seeing spikes that are much higher. Take a look at the median rent in Phoenix, Arizona, up more than 27%. Las Vegas, Orlando, and Tampa also landing in the top 10 markets for steepest increases. But it's Miami that comes out on top with more than a 50% year-over-year increase.
Now, shout out to Nico House, who's part of the MCSNU network. Nico is in Miami. Bro, I don't know how you do it. If you're watching this, I don't know how you do it, man. I just don't know. I hope you own your own place because over 50% increase. That's crazy, man. That's wild. Imagine last year you were paying $500. I know, stick with me here. I'm trying to do simple math. Imagine last year you were paying $500 on rent, and then today, now you're paying $750. Imagine that. Imagine paying $1,000 last year, and now you're paying $1,500. You don't think that's not going to affect you? Damn, man. Damn.
According to Realtor.com, this increase in rent means that people are spending more on housing. In Miami, 59% of a household's income is now spent on rent. It's more than 40% here in New York City. Economists say that these increases in rent prices will continue to drive inflation.
And what is happening now is that people are essentially saying, well, jobs are being created. Maybe I want to move out of parents' basement. At the same time, people who wanted to buy, now the prices are so high, they are renewing their rental leases. Consequently, the rental demand, very, very strong. Some people priced out of buying a home, also young adults moving out of the basement.
First of all, I'm damn near 40. Hang on, let me enlarge myself. I'm damn near 40. Can't even afford to live on my own. He's talking about young people. He's not talking about people like me. How many of us are millennials? See, here's the thing a lot of people don't remember. The oldest millennial is 42. That's the oldest millennial. Millennials, we're getting to middle age. We're not the kids that you thought that we were. So with that being said, some of us are still living at home. Yes, that's the problem. That's the problem. Now, you could make the argument that, capitalism, because the way it operates is that it discourages intergenerational households and thus, brings down the sense of community. And then people need to have more of a certain type of, mindset where it's okay to still live at home until you create a family and even have intergenerational households, which I agree. But at the same time, that is literally something that's by choice, right? That should be by choice, not by a forced coercion, right? That being said, we don't even have the option of living on our own. All right, I'm gonna say something. This kind of has to deal with housing, but sorry, sorry to all my comrades on RBM, but I'm gonna say this live. And I said this in a tweet a couple days ago, but yeah. Capitalism is the biggest cock blocker of them all. Want to know why people aren't having families? It's because we can't even afford to have a home. We can't even afford to date. We can't afford to take nobody out. We can't even bring somebody back to our place because we don't have our own place. That's what it is. Y'all want to know, like, for instance, people were kept talking about, oh my God, the birth rate is dropping. Why are people having kids anymore? Because we can't afford it. What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? And then there's a lot of us that those of us who went to school, tried to get ourselves a higher education. We succeeded at doing that. And then guess what? That's not translating to higher incomes that actually help us. And then you have companies like BlackRock buying up all the homes in the United States, thus turning us into a nation of renters. So there's no ownership. Couple that with Barack Obama actually tanking black wealth because he actually gave the money over to the banks instead of to the people. And so black wealth actually tanked under Barack Obama. Change we can believe in. So yeah, we're not okay. And then on top of it, you have boomers, a lot of boomers that are suffering too. Because guess what? Some of them never got a chance to buy a house because just the system is just that crappy. And the ones that didn't get a chance to buy a house, well, they're suffering too because some of them have to pay rent. Or some of them lost their homes in the financial crisis back in 2008. So now they are renters too. Or you have some that still do own their homes, but they're underwater in their homes. Then you have some who their property taxes went up exponentially. So there's a lot of people that are suffering. And yes, I did say capitalism is a cock blocker. And you know what? No, I'm gonna die on that hill.
The causes here are a nationwide shortage on housing and a rental inventory that is at a 38-year low. Looking through the rest of the year, rent prices are expected to continue to rise. Reporting from New York.
So it's going to continue to rise. Can you afford if your rent goes up even more? Is that viable? Is that financially viable for you? Because guaranteed it's going to raise again next year. I may not be that black dude with the perm and the handlebar mustache that's saying the rent is too damn high, but the sentiments are still shared the same. The rent is too damn high. And before I want to move on to before I move on to that, let me do this. Get that out of my face. Let me go to this super chat really quick. Thank you, Egg64, for the super chat. Egg64 says MSN had a poll, and they had the nerve to say, quote, threats to democracy was the top issue over cost of living, cost of thriving. I'm sorry, cost of living cost of living. Folks are delusional. What if I told you that the cost of living is a threat to democracy? If people can't afford to live, yeah. And when, you know, MSN says that, threats to democracy, they're probably talking about some other foreign government, not realizing that the biggest threat to democracy is actually the United States government itself, because they're literally pushing these threats to democracy themselves. They're obeying the masters, the corporate masters, constantly, who want to take democracy away. Don't believe me? Look at your job. Do you have a say, a democratic say over what happens at your job? Do you? No. People be like, oh, well, it's the market. You can just go anywhere. Well, when the market has a foothold on you and, you're forced to take, jobs that you really just can't pick and choose, you don't really have that much of a choice. Is it still democracy? No. So thank you so much, Egg64, for that as well. Appreciate it. And also, the homeless people are growing, the homeless population. You know how they were talking about in the news report that Miami had a over 50% increase in their rent. Well, this is also, I just found out. Oh, thanks. Get out of my face. It says Miami advances plan to move homeless onto island. This guy, I'm like, is this parody? That's what I was wondering. And it says City of Miami commissioners voted this week to pursue a pilot program to build a designated zone for people experiencing homelessness. The program calls for the construction of 50 to 100 tiny homes on Virginia Key, an 863-acre barrier island. Make sure. Yeah, okay. The location is home to a summer camp for kids, sewage plant not too far away, and right across the water is one of the most expensive zip codes in the United States. Commissioners calling the idea a quote-unquote transition zone, and the plan will provide housing, food, showers, and even outreach services for some of Miami's homeless population. Commissioner Manolo Reyes says, in my opinion, this is not an encampment that is going to be a concentration camp. Nobody's forcing anybody. I can already see this is slippery slope. I call this bullshit. Florida has about 27,000 people who are experiencing homelessness, and the program would house only about 100, a small dent in the overall problem in the Sunshine State faces. Some commissioners framed the program as a solution to homelessness, but the plan is getting a lot of opposition. You think? One commissioner is against the idea. Ken Russell says this is the opposite of a plan. This is a bad idea. The answer is permanent supportive housing. I agree. Russell has an idea to instead turn the land to a soccer park for kids. See, here's the thing. A lot of people always ask this question: how do you solve homelessness? The question is, what is the word homeless? It's homeless. Homeless. But if you give people homes, they won't be. Oh my God! And I'm not saying give people some big, huge mansion. I'm saying, give them maybe a studio or a one bedroom. We don't even have to build new housing for homelessness. We literally have a housing stock that is plentiful. Millions and millions of homes that we can just, all right, let's designate this, everybody that has housing. And the crazy part is when you have programs that make people have to jump through hoops just so that they can get housing, well, it's not very successful. Because what is one thing that a job wants you to have? They want you to have a place to live. You have to have a residence in order to have a job at a lot of places. But what if you don't have a place to live? If you don't have any stability, how can you expect to get on your feet? You can't. And so they expect you to start from zero. The people who expect you to start from zero never started at zero themselves. There may be that one person out of 1,000 or out of 100,000, but they're the exception rather than the rule. An island for homeless people? What type of dystopian bullshit is that? Just give them a house, damn it. Look, these people get on my damn nerves. I can't even with some people. I'm telling you. They could have just gave him a house. They could have just did that. But no. I'm not saying give him some huge house, right? Just give him a home. Housing costs are so bad that they even have a website that shows how much it is per person. Let me see. Yep, here we go. So this is from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. Just want to give credit to Sabby Sabs, who actually had this on her show a couple weeks back. And this actually shows how much you need to make and what the income is for each place. So I know we talked about Florida. If you guys can see here, Florida's number 12 in highest housing wage. You need to make, on average, $26.38 per hour to afford a 2-bedroom rental. So you need to work at least 106 hours a week at the minimum wage to afford a 2-bedroom home in Florida. Breeze, if you're watching, in Texas, it's number 23rd in highest housing wage. You need to make at least $22.54 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom home. At minimum wage, you need to work 124 hours a week. Let's go to Missouri. Not Illinois, Missouri. No, not Georgia, Missouri. Okay. Missouri's 41st. Where Nick lives, you need to make at least $16.94 an hour. You have to work at least 61 hours a week. That's not as bad as some areas in this nation, but you still have to work 61 hours a week, which is basically 12-hour days, 5 days a week. So if you're too tired, well, oh well. If you're too tired to live the rest of your life, that's basically what it is. Let's go to CJ State, California. CJ lives in the second highest housing wage state. In order to afford a 2-bedroom, you need to make $39.01 an hour. At minimum wage, that's 104 hours a week. Let's go to Massachusetts. I gotta scroll up for this one. That's Savvy State. It's third highest in housing wage. You need to make $37.97 an hour. You have to work 107 hours a week. Crazy, isn't it? Nina Turner State, Ohio, is 38th in the country. You need to make at least $17.05 an hour. 73 hours a week. 73 hours a week. It's a lot. Let's go to Illinois. Shout out to Heartlands Media. They're in Illinois. They're the 20th highest housing cost, $22.80 an hour. 76 hours a week you have to work in order to afford a 2-bedroom in Illinois. The link to this is in the description, but oh, and let me show you guys the highest while I'm here. What's the highest? Hawaii. Highest housing wage in the country. You have to make $40.63 an hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom rental. At the federal minimum wage, you have to work 161 hours a week. 161 hours a week. By the way, there's only 168 hours in a week, which means almost every waking hour in the day, you need basically you only get 1 hour to rest each day. And so basically 23 hours a day, you're working for 7 days in order to afford to live in Hawaii. What does that tell you? Like, what does that tell you? Right? Let's go to more info really quick. And what's the minimum wage in Hawaii? It's $10.10 an hour. So when we say that the system has a problem, when we tell you guys that it's a systemic problem, not an individual problem, we mean it. We're not just talking about out of our ass. We're not just blowing smoke. When we say we're suffering out here, we really mean that we're suffering. Okay? Last year, story time. Last year, my rent went up $100. Okay? For 1 year, $100. We're in August. Last month, July, my rent went up $250 more. $250 more my rent went up. My rent is higher than my disability benefits. That's my primary source of income. I really don't make much off streaming. So guess what? I can't even afford to live on my own. I'm 38 years old. I can't even afford to live on my own. JB, you should have did all the right things and went to school. I went to culinary school. I went to a Mania High School, went to culinary school. In my last 2 years, in my junior and senior year, graduated, even did an internship program there, right? Finished the culinary program. The culinary program was 2 years. I finished in a year and a half. And then I went into the industry and worked. And then I got sick and got on dialysis. I didn't go to college because I didn't want to get into student debt. Right? And now, are you going to sit here and tell me that I didn't do all the right things? Because I tried to get out of getting in student debt. I literally got a technical education. You're going to tell people like my colleague Sabi Sabs that when she went to college, she actually went into graduate school. She became an academic advisor for a major university. And she still had to struggle. You're going to tell a lot of us who did the right thing, who did the right things. And by the way, that whole did the right things, like, look, here's my thing. That is classes as hell in itself. Because you went to school, you got a job, you're working for labor. Just because you didn't go to college does not mean you didn't do all the right things. That means that maybe, just maybe, you either said, number one, I can't afford it. Number two, college isn't right for me, so I don't want to go. I just want to work hard and, live my life. And that's okay too. And you should make a living wage on your job because you work and you put in labor. So I just want to dismiss that. When I say do all the right things, I mean according to this system and what they told us. Because a lot of us millennials, we all watched the Cosby Show back in the day when we were little. We did, especially on the reruns. We watched the Cosby Show and how it was pressed upon his kids, go to college, go to college, go to college. We all saw the movie Accepted with Justin Long when the dad was like, if you want a good life, you got to go to college. That's what we did. A lot of us did. You got looks. You got weird looks if you said you didn't want to go to college back in the day. You got like, what? Well, you're going into the military though, right? It was either one of the two. You had to either go to college or be in the military. Otherwise, you were considered a deadbeat, even though you could be making a living wage. So the classism, yeah, that also has to go out the window. I want to give, hang on, let me make sure I delete this so that it doesn't get in my face. All right, so shout out to Nick, my comrade and brother RBN. He's a part of KC Tenants. They actually talked to KC Tenants on Democracy Now! And this is actually a really good point to talk about. And let's get on this. Actually, yeah, I'll go into the chat in a little bit. But let's go.
The soaring cost of rent with the same level of dedication he's shown to reducing gas prices. This comes as a new report shows evictions are spiking as rental protections disappear. A coalition of hundreds of tenant unions and housing activists call the situation a national emergency as rental costs rise at the fastest pace in 3 decades. This is Ani Thompson, an organizer with Faith in the Valley in Stockton, California, who's in Washington, D.C. this week as a tenant delegate with the Homes Guarantee Campaign. He spoke to Democracy Now! After meeting with Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Sandra Thompson.
I experienced my rent going from $1,500 to $1,700 in 1 year. And the thing is that with paying $1,500, that was already high, but to hike it up from $1,500 to $1,700, I felt like was ridiculous. When it comes to a 10% rent hike, like it actually, like I said, it does have a big difference, or it does mean a big difference for a lot of folks in California. Like in my own personal situation, that 10% rent hike meant a $200 difference in my rent. And that within itself meant that I was not able to, fix my car when it needed maintenance due to having to forfeit that $200 every month to rent. And then it also meant, getting in a cycle of overdrafting my account and inquiring fees and then paying it off when I got paid. But then because I paid that money to those fees, now I have to overdraft my account again so that I can cover my bills. And then I have the fees again, and then I have to pay it off when I get paid again.
So I actually went through this. So what I did was, it wasn't the overdraft fee. Well, I got overdraft like a mug back in the day. I'm overdrawn now. What the hell am I talking about? Yes, my account's in the red, but I took out payday loans. So, okay. So here's how I did it. So, and this started when I first moved in. I did this up until last year when we got the stimulus check. Okay. So basically for 8 years from the time I moved in where I'm at right now, I would go to AmScot, take out a payday loan, pay the rent. 30 days later, go back, pay them what I owe them plus the 10% on top of it. And then the next day, because by law you have to wait 24 hours, take that loan back out and then continue on and then pay the rent again. So I would take it out and pay it back. Next day, take it out. Then 30 days later, pay it back. Then next day, take it out. 30 days later, pay it back. 30 days later, take it out, pay it back. Boom, 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 boom. 8 years I did that. I did that for 8 years. Thousands of dollars that AmScot got in my money because I just couldn't afford it. So that's what I had to do. Struggling. Until got a stimulus check and I paid it back and I never took it back out. All because of that stimulus check. And I said, nope, I'm not doing it. I could have, but I was like, no. So I paid it back, never did it again. And I haven't been back to AmScot in over a year. Thankfully. Because you get caught in a cycle. That's how they get you. This is why you go to the hood. If you're not in the hood, go to the hood. I guarantee you, just like a block from me, there's a check cashing place, there's a chicken shop, and there's a liquor store. I got like 5 check cashing places near me within a half-mile radius. So, yeah, you get caught up in these things. And every single month, there'll be a line out the door with people waiting who are doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. Exactly. Because they got caught up in that cycle. Yes, and Colin, thank you. And a lot of churches too. Yet we're struggling like crazy. So when it comes to Zonnie Thompson, I feel his pain. Oh, I do. I really, really do. All right, let me continue.
And then it's just this vicious cycle that starts up, and it almost seems like it has no end. I think that it's no brainer that rent prices are definitely tied to inflation, right? And that for them to not include it is kind of like disheartening. But that this issue, this housing crisis issue, is not going to go anywhere, and that they cannot continue to ignore it. And further or prolonging addressing it is only going to make it worse for American citizens.
That's tenant delegate Zonnie Thompson, part of the Homes Guarantee campaign underway now in Washington, D.C. For now, we stay in D.C. to speak with Tara Raghuveer, director of KC Tenants, a grassroots tenant-led organization based in Kansas City. She's also the Homes Guarantee campaign director at People's Action. Tara, welcome back to Democracy Now! Explain why you're in D.C. and the level of pressure on people who are renting and rents increasing in a way we haven't seen in like 30 years.
Thank you so much for having me back, Amy. We're in DC because the rent is too damn high. You heard Zonnie speak to this, but people across the country are being squeezed at the gas pump, at the grocery store. But the biggest expense for most American households is their cost of their housing. It's their rent. And rents are up 6.3% in the latest inflation figures. This is the biggest increase in rents in 35 years. Median rent across the country is over $2,000 for the first time ever. And people simply can't afford it. This rent inflation crisis is really sparing no one and no place. So we're in DC with tenants like Zonnie, a delegation of tenants who have been impacted by these rent hikes, to push the president to do everything in his legal authority to regulate the rent now.
And can you explain about pandemic protections being rolled back and how that affects people?
So the eviction rates are back up to pre-pandemic levels, but really there's no rate of eviction that should be acceptable. We can't celebrate lower than normal rates, and we can't celebrate returning back to normal. What we believe is every eviction is an act of violence.
That part, girl, ooh. We gotta repeat that. We gotta repeat that. We gotta repeat that. No, 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 no. I love it. And she said it with her whole chest. Thank you so much, ma'am. 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 Let's hear that again.
Of eviction that should be acceptable. We can't celebrate lower than normal rates, and rates are back up to pre-pandemic levels, but really there's no rate of eviction that should be acceptable. We can't celebrate lower than normal rates, and we can't celebrate returning back to normal. What we believe is every eviction is an act of violence. And
that part, every eviction is an act of violence. Have you ever been evicted? Anybody in the chat, have you ever been evicted? Have you ever been to the point where you have police show up to your door and you have that orange or yellow paper on your door? And after days of stressing because you couldn't pay the rent, and then you finally have that eviction. Mind you, when the eviction process starts, because I know I've been through it, when the eviction process starts, then that's when either the landlord or the apartment community gets legal services involved, which means also not only do you have to pay the rent that is owed, plus the late fees, and as well as the attorney fees that are taxed onto it. So when you're late on your rent, then the price goes up because now you have even more to pay on top of it. And they won't take partial payments. They don't take partial payments. You can't set up a payment plan in order to get yourself back into the black. No. You have to come up with the entire amount right there and then pay them back to stop the legal process. And then you can stop it. But you have to pay the rent on top of the late fee and on top of the attorney's fees as well. And so then you get the maintenance people and you get the police and people like that. They're going into your house, touching your personal belongings, taking them out through the front door and through the back door, and they're placing it on the curb. And if it rains, oh well. If people steal it, oh well. And then guess what? You have to figure out the way to move all your stuff. Well, you don't have enough money for rent. So you obviously don't have enough money for a moving truck or a van or a U-Haul. Where are you supposed to go? What if you don't have a place where you can go and live? Does that sound violent to you? Does that sound traumatizing to you? And please don't come in his comments telling me, oh, you should have just been more responsible. Take that bullshit away from me. Get that out of here. Because what did I just tell y'all earlier? Is that people are trying to do the best that they possibly can, but the system is rigged against them to the point where you literally have people losing their homes, losing their livelihoods, day in and day out. They're getting paid pennies. And then you have the government sitting there giving them crumbs, and saying, well, that's what we can do. Oh, I'm sorry, but Joe Manchin, Christian Cinema, the parliamentarian. We can't do it. We're sorry. We just can't do it. Then you have people like Joe Biden go, I have no sympathy for all of you. And please, anybody that supports Donald Trump, don't give me that BS or Donald Trump was trying to fight for us too. No, he wasn't, because he's exactly like Joe Biden. Because he did exactly the same things. He did exactly the same thing as George W. Bush and Barack Obama did. They're all the same. Wake up. Because people will sit there and then they will blame you for a systemic issue. Where's Mao when you need him? Anyway, let's continue. Shout out to this sister, man. Shout out to her.
And what the administration did during the pandemic to alleviate the risk of eviction or provide some relief to tenants was really a bailout to landlords. There was billions and billions of dollars of federal assistance put out in the form of rental assistance that put the burden on tenants to apply, but they didn't get to keep that check, right? They had to turn that check over to their landlord.
Oh, wait, hold on. So, it was a bailout for landlords. So landlords got bailed out. But what about us? Does this remind you of back in 2008, when the banks got bailed out instead of the people, the homeowners? Banks got bailed out. People still lost their homes. Now landlords are getting bailed out, but renters aren't being helped. Miss Tara, Please keep going.
The abomination in all of this is that none of that public money came with strings attached, right? None of that actually built in any structural shift of power from landlords to tenants. So today, not only do we see evictions returning back to pre-pandemic levels, we also see a different type of eviction crisis playing out outside of the courtrooms as people simply can't afford their rent. See, when a landlord increases the rent beyond a place where a tenant can afford it, they don't have the choice to just scrape together another $200 and try to make it work. Often that is tantamount to an eviction, and people are losing their homes because.
What she said is basically what I like to call pricing out. So basically, you're still in a sense being evicted, but without the eviction notice, right? Because let's say, for instance, you're living someplace, right? Let's say hypothetically, your rent's $1,000. You can't really afford it, but you could barely afford it, but you're paying $1,000. And let's say your landlord increases it to $1,250. You might be able to afford $1,050, maybe scrape by with $1,100, but you can't do $1,250 a month. So what are you forced to do? You're forced to evict yourself. And here's the crazy part. People will talk about, oh, we'll just go and find another place. If every other place in the area, in the state, in the county is charging the same amount or more, where do you go? If you can't afford it there and everybody's paying either the same amount or more, there's no place to go. I'm in that situation. And then on top of it, don't forget credit checks. Yes, credit checks. Because guess what? If you try to go someplace else, but then you fail the credit check, even if it's less, you get denied. And then on top of it, let's say hypothetically you're married, or you're in a relationship, you're with your partner, and then because they're over the age of 18, guess what? They also have to apply for the credit check too. By the way, to me, it is crazy how expensive these application fees are for apartments. It is crazy. It's asinine. $40, $50 per application fee is just crazy. But anyways, I digress. So you pay the application fee, right? Then on top of that, they do a credit check. And let's say you pass the credit check, but what about your partner? What about your spouse? What about, let's say you're living with a family member. Let's say you're living with a sibling. And then they get denied. Well, guess what? You don't get the place. And you can't move in there with somebody over the age of 18 without them being on the lease as well. So guess what? You still don't get the place. You can't. So even that is a barrier. Trust me, I know. I'm still going through it. I'm still suffering. So all this is happening and people just don't realize it. People are sitting here going, well, just find another place. With what? With what? And then on top of that, the expenses of moving. You know how much it costs to get a U-Haul? Okay, yeah, they're like, oh, it's $20, but you have to come up with the $100-something deposit. And then on top of that, you also have to pay for the gas that you use, which is exorbitant amount of money because the gas stations are now charging up the wazoo. And then on top of that, and here's something that people don't talk about. This hasn't been proven to me, but I do think that companies like U-Haul, they rig their trucks so that the gas gauge goes down faster than what it should. So then they end up charging more for that on top of it. So then you're getting screwed every which way. They got us by the throat. let me, man. But I'm happy Miss Tara is speaking facts here. Keep going, Miss Tara.
Their rent is increasing or their lease is not getting, try to make it work. Often that is tantamount to an eviction, and people are losing their homes because their rent is increasing or their lease is not getting renewed.
And in just a moment, we're going to speak with one of the.
That's another point. Leases are not getting renewed. That's another point. Because some landlords will be like, no, we're not going to renew your lease. And then guess what they do? They refuse to renew your lease. Then when you move out, they may do a little bit of upkeep or renovation, right? But then once they don't renew your lease and you move out, then they'll increase the rent exponentially much higher. And then they'll start renting out. But then this is why nobody in your neighborhood can now get into that place, because now it's been priced out. And then more wealthier people come into that neighborhood because they can't afford it. Particularly a lot of people who are wealthier and a lot of times white. And so then they go into that neighborhood because now they're starting to build up these more expensive shops, expensive stores, expensive businesses in the area. And basically you're pushed out of the neighborhood. This is called gentrification. This is what happened in my area. A couple blocks away from me, there's a mall called the Mall at Millennia. This mall is probably the most expensive mall in Central Florida. A couple blocks away from me, right? It has a Neiman Marcus, it has a Tiffany, it has a Jimmy Choo, it has a Versace stores, right? Yeah, they have Christian Louboutin stores. They have all this there, right? There is the Mercedes-Benz store. There's the Aston Martin store. I'm sorry, car dealership. There's the Lexus dealership. There's they got areas where they sell Bentleys, Mercedes, all that, all the the most expensive automobiles. So it's right across the street from that mall, right? You don't think that increased the rent where I live exponentially? Oh, you bet your ass it did. So once they did that, then everybody started increasing their rent because the values went up, right? But our pay did not. Our pay didn't go up. So if the values of everything else goes up, but the pay doesn't go up, then who gets that offset of that money? Because if the values go up, but your pay doesn't go up, then that means that they're making more money, but you're not getting paid more. Then guess who gets the rest of that surplus? Hi, welcome to RBN. My name is James. Nice to meet you. What you're experiencing now in my explanation is a process that we like to call capitalism. In the system called capitalism, what happens is that you have a person who typically exploits a lot of money out of more poorer people so that they can make an exponentially larger amount of money. So then they take that money, which is called investments, and then they put it into a business. And so therefore, in order to make more profit, then they actually pay the person less than what the product is worth, or they pay the person less than what they get the money for. And they take that money and they either give it to shareholders or they pocket it themselves, and some of it goes to reinvestment into the business. But by reinvestment into the business, it doesn't go into the employees' pockets at all. And so then the employees continue to make shit profits while the people who are at the top continue to steal their surplus labor. Once they continue to steal their surplus labor, then the rich get richer. And then the rich will continue to cut corners in that business, meaning that your healthcare prices may go up, or you may lose certain benefits, or your pay gets cut, or people get fired. And guess what? That's more money in the pockets for the people at the top. Guess what? Then they make more money. But then they also want to make more money on the front end. So guess what? They start to raise their prices, even though the prices for your pay hasn't gone up. The price for your labor hasn't gone up. So that forces you to have to work more hours. That forces you to have to get more jobs, which therein gives more money to the people at the top. That being said, then you're sitting here suffering, and they're sitting pretty in places like the Hamptons and Calabasas, or in places here in Florida, like in Windermere and Isleworth. Yeah. And then when you try to either organize or get into a union, or if you try to take ownership of, the means of production in your place of business, then guess what happens there? Then they call the cops on you, or they'll do different tactics to get you fired. Yeah, that's the way it works. Welcome to RBN. Continue.
Leaders of the movement to help the unhoused in Los Angeles and the growing tension there. But if you can talk about, we know the rent that are going up in coastal cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, here in New York City. You're from Kansas City. Talk about it all over.
In Kansas City, the rent is up 7.5%. City Hall defines affordable as $1,200 for a one-bedroom apartment, and that's based on an area median income of $86,000. I don't know a single person in Kansas City who's making $86,000.
Do you know somebody who makes $86,000 a year? Because I sure as hell don't. $1,200 is affordable. See, here's the thing, and this is what gets me upset, especially when you got politicians who say, "Oh, well, this is going to be affordable." The question is, affordable for whom? I'm going to ask again. Affordable for whom? Because affordable is a word that's very subjective. It's a very subjective word. Because a Bentley is affordable to Jeff Bezos. They'll use words like affordable and access, right? I have access to a Mercedes S-Class down the street at the Mercedes-Benz of South Orlando. I have access to it. I can go there. But I need like $140,000 in order to purchase it. So really, do I have true access? No, I don't. Because there's a barrier there. There's that financial, that profit barrier there that prevents me from getting it. Right? Affordable subjective. To somebody making $400,000, $500,000 a year, a Mercedes S-Class is affordable. So when somebody says, "Oh, $1,200 a month is affordable," for whom? For whom? Because when you put the profit barrier there, you're literally putting a barrier for some people. And when it comes to essential things like housing, food, healthcare, education, when you put a financial barrier there, that means you're Xing out some people who can't get it. Therefore, that you say, if you cannot get past that barrier, you deserve to die. That's basically what you're saying. So if you're saying there needs to be a price barrier for healthcare, that means you're saying that some people do not deserve it. When you put a price barrier for housing, that means you're saying some people don't deserve it. When you're putting a price barrier for education, you're saying some people don't deserve it. So if you're a politician and you're saying that, if you're tweeting, oh, healthcare is a right, housing is a right, education is a right, but yet you're still using that affordable phrase, you're lying, and you've been lying, and you've been blowing smoke up our asses the entire time. Because if it was truly a right, it wouldn't have a financial barrier there. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? You're sitting here and telling me that, oh, well, it's affordable. Maybe for you making $140,000 a year, not counting your book sales, but for somebody like me that's, on disability, and by the way, why aren't we talking about the people who are disabled, who also are suffering, people who are on Social Security and disability, who are disabled and elderly? How are they doing? Have you checked on your elderly and disabled friends lately? Because guess what? We're not okay. We're not. We haven't been okay for a long time. Let me do the math real quick. Hold up. I'm curious. I want to make sure I'm accurate. Okay, yeah. So when I get on disability, it's literally less. If you were to equate it to a full-time job, it's less than $8 an hour. What did what was the median that the amount that you had to make in Florida in order to afford, let me see, in order to afford a 2-bedroom, you had to make $26.38 an hour. So I'm about $18 an hour less than what I need to. Okay. So that's my problem. So when politicians want to talk about, oh, it's affordable. Oh, it's affordable. Oh, you have access. You need access to healthcare. Oh, for instance, in the Inflation Recovery Act. Oh, well, your prescription drugs are going to be affordable. It's going to be capped at $2,000 per year. Who can afford $2,000 a year for medication? I don't know anybody that can afford $160 a month for medications. What? All right, let's continue. Because I got more stuff to get to.
Or who can afford a $1,200 apartment. So people are sent into the cycles that Zani described, where they're paying extra in their rent and they're having to cut back on other bills like their medication or their groceries. Unlike something like gas, rent is not an expense in your monthly budget that you can simply choose to cut back on, right? The alternative is homelessness. And to your point, homelessness is being criminalized in states like mine, like Missouri, and all across the country. So people are trapped in a really violent cycle right now where they're either forced to overdraft and cut back on meals and turn off the lights and sacrifice their humanity, or they're forced to the streets where they're criminalized for their poverty.
I wanted to turn to two tenants as safeguards to prevent evictions during the pandemic expire. Tenants across the country facing these rent increases of up to, 5, 10%, in California, 10%. These are Los Angeles tenants. Juan Garcia is neighbor of over 17 years, Ulysses Del Bosque, describing the burden of rising rents.
Estoy preocupado.
Yes, I am worried because they wanted to raise the rent, but unfortunately, I told them no, no, I did not accept that they raised it, but the other tenants did. They raised it by 10% and the tenants give them the rent.
There are going to be more problems because of the evictions that are increasing as a result of rents starting to rise. And there's too much inflation. Then it is impossible to be able to live quietly with everything all of the situations that are happening.
Tara Raghavir, talk about the demographics of who's being priced out of their rentals.
Disproportionately, the people who are impacted by rent hikes and by the type of rent gouging that we see corporate actors employing in the rental market are Black and brown tenants, are poor and working class tenants. Black women are the people who are the most at risk of eviction during, quote, normal times. And these are accelerated conditions that are also having that disproportionate effect on those same communities. There's recent research that tells us that institutional investors, private equity funds, real estate speculators target communities where there's actually higher percentage of Black and brown neighborhoods and people who are renting their homes. And then they raise the rent, right? They raise the rent to levels that the people there can't afford. And
Here's the thing. Here's the problem. When you raise the rents, and a lot of these landlords and a lot of these companies, especially, they work in tandem with each other. So there's this phrase that they'll use called fair market value. If you have just a handful of companies that own all the rental air properties in the area, they all know each other. And they all raise it, right? So that they can make more money. But here's the question. What can you do against them? Like, they basically make it so that you have no choice because you need a place to live. So you're going to have to cough up the money. And so if they want more money, they're just going to ask for it. I mean, they're going to demand it. They're going to raise your rent. They're going to say no negotiations. And if you move out, they'll just find somebody else who will pay it. And that's how they operate. Also, when people talk about inflation, this inflation is on purpose. It is price gouging. What you see at the pump is price gouging. What you see in your bills is price gouging. Hell, everybody's electric bill is up because of price gouging. So because of that price gouging, and you having basically no choice, you're basically under duress in order to live there. You're working under duress because you have no other way to make, a living wage, because now you have to work for these companies that all these companies basically pay the same. You basically are under duress. And so a lot of people, they feel like they have no choice. And just like what the gentleman was saying earlier, he said he didn't want to pay that extra 10% in rent, but all the other tenants, they agreed to it. This is why collective action is necessary. Continuing.
Force them into this kind of eviction cycle.
Can you talk about the Federal Housing Finance Agency, how it can help in fighting against rising rents? That's who you're meeting with in Washington.
We had a very promising meeting with the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency yesterday, Director Sandra Thompson, and we talked to her about the ways that FHFA, in its role as a regulator of Fannie and Freddie, can actually have a massive impact on regulating the rents and protecting tenants. So as a regulator of Fannie and Freddie, FHFA has a role to play to actually add conditions to any federal financing. I'll give you an example. There's a corporate landlord called Starwood, where the CEO on a recent earnings call called inflation the gift that keeps on giving. And they've raked in record profits during the pandemic while they've been hiking rents across the country. Starwood has federally backed mortgages, right? So that's something within FHFA's purview. They could add conditions to the federal financing that many of these institutional investors rely on in order to rein in their rents. We could regulate rent increases, regulate lease renewals. That's all within Sandra Thompson's purview as the director of the FHFA.
And Congress, President Biden, what can they do?
So Congress is set to pass the Inflation Reduction Act. It doesn't have anything to do with reducing the rent. In our view, the president and his team have been thinking about gas and many other elements in inflation, and they've really been neglecting rent. This is the elephant in the room. Rent is the largest expense for most American households, and it's a core driver of inflation. So even as the Inflation Reduction Act passes, for it not to include rent is a major red flag. We're calling on the president to do everything in his executive authority to direct agency level action, of course, to direct congressional action, and to use the power of the pulpit to call this crisis what it is, which is a national emergency, and to call out those actors in the private market that are actually rent gouging, using inflation as an excuse, but raising rents beyond the rate of inflation.
Tara Raghavir, I want to thank you for being with us, Director of KC Tenants, grassroots tenant-led organization.
So as far as getting things done through these politicians, I applaud their efforts. Do I have faith that the politicians will actually listen and do something? Not unless the feet are out in the streets. So this is why I encourage people, if you guys know tenants unions, things like that, to get involved. Of course, Nick, part of RBN, is on the board of KC Tenants. So if you guys would like to talk more about, KC Tenants and supporting them, give Nick a shout. Because this is ridiculous. Also, I want to give a shout out to council person Shama Sawant. Last year when I spoke to her here on RBN, she was actually doing some program. She was doing trying to get housing programs for Seattle for people to ease the burden for renters. And she came up with a lot of really great policy positions. One of them being that if they're going to raise the rent, then they need to give you 180 days notice or 6 months. Another policy was that you could not be evicted during a school year if you had children that were in school. And then there was another one where if you raised the rent more than 10%, then you also had to pay the moving costs for the person that you raised their rent on. So it's different things like that. But that being said, shout out to people who, especially who are third party, who are, pushing, policies like that, at least to try to give us trying to ease the burden on a lot of us that are going through this. So yeah, I deeply appreciate it. It's a lot of those people who are doing that. And wait, I'm looking for it. Okay. Let me show this tweet. I want to give a shout out to Roger Meadows, who actually shared that clip with me initially. Roger Meadows, of course, he tagged us at RBN. And he says a law to make it illegal for private equity to own apartments and commercial properties is needed, plus government jobs guarantee, where 25% of wage is enough to cover rent for 2-bedroom apartment. So shout out to Roger Meadows. Thank you so very much. Appreciate your voice and all the ideas and solutions that you come up with and share with us. So I appreciate and shout out to you. Now, I'm going to show this video really quick that I also saw on here, because I think this is also important. Let me get rid of that too. I'm done with this. All right. Let me see. And I think this is going to be, you all are going to identify with this. And when they say life, especially in this country, is a rat race, we really mean it is a rat race. So shout out to their survival podcast. They said the only accurate metaphor for human existence I have seen is they live, but this gets done in 2 minutes flat. So I'm going to play this, and this is going to be very interesting. Take a look. Basically, that's the video. But yeah, it shows that we're in a constant rat race because the system is designed for us to consume and consume and consume, but to constantly be giving more to the people at the top. And so I think one of the problems that we don't realize is everybody really understands that the system is rigged against us. And because of everybody understanding that the system is rigged against us, in order to extract as much from us as possible, then that means that there must be a class solidarity. That means that class needs to be at the forefront of our minds when it comes to talking to others. And we realize that not everyone is going to agree with us. With that being said, I saw from a fellow comrade, they tweeted out this video that was on TikTok. And that TikTok video, I tried to, they don't have it, they don't have retweeting enabled on their account. So I couldn't retweet it because I would have done that. I tried to share it, the video, through the link on my tweet, just didn't do it. So I had to download the video myself and then upload it, right? Mind you, by the way, John Cusack and Tim Pool retweeted the video too that I put out. Well, not that I put out, but that I posted, from TikTok. So I'm going to show you guys the video. And I think this is something that we need, especially those of us who are on the left. We need to start adopting these type of arguments, because one of the issues that we don't do is we don't really, I think what we need to start doing is to start being more kind, but not necessarily uh, kind and truthful, but not necessarily accommodating to the systems or ideas that perpetuate um, our oppression. And you can do this in a very smart way. And I think the person that did this, you can argue this in a very smart way. So here's my tweet. I said, proof that when you talk about issues from a layman's perspective, people will agree with you, even if they claim to be conservative, because it's a class issue. Many of us should take a lesson from this. And thanks to SLC Socialist for showing me this. This was originally made by Walter Masterson. So Walter Masterson was the creator of this video. So shout out to Walter Masterson for this. I want to make sure I give the flowers and credit to where credit is due. And so I want you guys to really take a look at this video if you guys haven't already, and just consider where you can actually have points of agreement to even people who consider themselves hardcore Trump supporters, where you can actually move them to the correct position because you realize they're propagandized too. So,
in order to stop the communist agenda, we need to get rid of the big banks.
Right.
Karl Marx, no one knew who he was until the big banks distributed all of his literature.
Right.
Yeah, so in order to get rid of communism, we need to get rid of the big banks.
Yeah.
Get rid of big pharma.
Right.
What else? Big tech.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like land like these landlords that are coming in and buying hundreds of properties. You don't even know what
right. Like China is doing it, and Bill Gates,
Zillow.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people here are very fed up, and they're ready to collectivize and sort of seize the means of production.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's why I support unions so much.
Well, it's funny. I work for actually not this shirt, the other shirt I had an earlier, for a company not too far from here called Liberty Pump, non-union. They let the owners of the company sold a third of the company to the employees. So the employees have ownership of it, which is a lot better. And
they're collectivizing.
Right.
Cooperative.
It's an ESOP.
Yeah, the workers own the means of production.
Their families work there. Their dad, the sons work there, and that's typically where America started. A lot of families did that.
Okay, so let's break this down. Okay. Now, I'm gonna be real with you. Okay. There's a few people in the comments that are going, socialism is when the government does stuff. They're like, oh no, that's not socialism. Socialism isn't when workers seize the means of production. Boo boo, boo boo. Let's do this. That's literally what socialism is. The definition says that this is from this is just a Google search. It says socialism is a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Community can also be workers, basically. Let me see here. Let's go to Merriam-Webster. So, various economic and political theories advocating for collective governmental ownership and administration of means of production and/or distribution of goods. If it's worker owned, then it's also the means of production that's owned by the workers. And if it's the workers that run the government, that is also socialism. So, hang on, let me go back to that. Let me. Okay, got it. So let's go back and analyze. Okay.
In order to stop the communist agenda, we need to get rid of the big banks.
First of all, as a socialist myself, he said, first of all, you need to get rid of the big banks. I agree. We should have a public bank. Why not? Right? It's not like we never had it. I think we had a postal bank up until I think it was 1968, where we actually did banking through the United States Postal Service. So yeah, I agree.
Right.
Karl Marx, no one knew who he was until the big banks distributed all of his literature.
Right.
Yeah. So in order to get rid of communism, we need to get rid of the big banks.
Yeah.
Get rid of big pharma.
Right.
I agree. I think there should be a full nationalization of our healthcare system. That means that the community owns, the workers own, basically the healthcare system. I mean, they basically do it in the UK. Now, the UK isn't working as well as it used to because it's death by 1,000 cuts, because they're literally slashing budgets over there. And then once they slash the budgets and it starts working a little bit more poorly, then they'll say, oh, well, look, it doesn't work because it's run by the government, even though you're literally slashing it and you're killing it, you're strangling it, and then saying it doesn't work. But I digress. But yes, I do agree that get rid of big pharma, of course. Yeah.
What else? Big tech.
Right.
I also agree with that. I think that, for instance, like Twitter is the de facto, Twitter and places like Twitter and Facebook are basically the de facto public squares. That being said, I honestly think that either it should be severely broken up, using antitrust laws, or if we're going to nationalize it and make it into, a public square for the entire country to talk. I agree with that too. And then apply free speech laws.
Yeah, and it's like land like these landlords that are coming in and buying hundreds of properties. You don't even know what corporation.
Like China is doing it, and Bill Gates,
Zillow.
Yeah.
He said in Zillow, BlackRock is also doing that. I also think that no, they shouldn't be able to do that. So, yeah.
I feel like a lot of people here are very fed up, and they're ready to collectivize and sort of seize the means of production.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's why I support unions so much.
Well, it's funny. I work for actually not this shirt, the other shirt I had an earlier, for a company not too far from here called Liberty Pump, non-union. They let the owners of the company sold a third of the company to the employees.
So they literally sold a third of the company to the employees, and now it's partially employee owned. I agree with giving the ownership over to the employees. I agree with that. I'm a socialist. I agree with that. That's what we should be doing. We shouldn't have all this money and all the profit that is stolen from the 1% and taken up at the top. I agree with that. Yeah.
So the employees have ownership of it, which is a lot better. And
Well, they're collectivizing.
right, it's
Cooperative.
an ESOP.
Yeah, the workers own the means of
and then
production.
their families work there. Their dad, the sons work there, and that's typically where America started. A lot of families did that.
And he actually said it's better. Yeah. So that's my thing. So when it comes to talking to people who may not agree with you on the issues, they may say, "Oh my God, socialism's horrible." Communism, communism is basically just basically just like socialism, except for it's a classless, stateless society. So really, if you want to talk about smaller government, which conservatives say that they're actually for, well, really, communists are really for the elimination of state, a stateless society. So therefore, come on. But so my whole thing is meet them where they're at, right? And we on the left, a lot of times we can be condescending sometimes to certain people without realizing that a lot of people who consider themselves conservative really are basing it on either half truths or lies that were told to them by our nation, by the powers that be. And so therefore they believe it, and they think they drank the Kool-Aid. They drank the Kool-Aid, and that's what they think. And then they'll believe, that people who are getting rid of homelessness in these other socialist countries, that they're dictators, when that's not what they are. That they're actually, surprise, surprise, democratically elected. And so going issue for issue when it comes to things like education, housing, hell, like, look, and I love when Nick talks about this. He'll talk about how you have a lot of people who are conservative that talk about they don't want government tyranny, and how a lot of times they'll have guns, and they'll be against government tyranny, and they'll have that flag that says "Don't tread on me." And he said, "You're literally allowing the government to tread on other people. What are you talking about? You look at black people getting tread on all the time. And then you guys back the police. You're literally backing state violence against people who look like me. So you're not even living by the premise, the tenets of do not tread on me, because you're literally backing the state when they're treading on people." So, and it's not necessarily being a challenge. Like, for instance, like, the guy didn't disparage the person he was talking to, but you find common ground and you show, look, you're being lied to. You're being gypped. And a lot of times they'll be like, well, Donald Trump was trying to fight for us and blah, blah, blah. If you look at all the things substantively what Donald Trump actually did, then you start to realize, and you juxtapose him with people like Joe Biden, they're exactly the same. They did all the same things. Like, for instance, all those weapons that were sold to Saudi Arabia, guess what? There's literally a video where Mohammed bin Salman is sitting with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and he's basically talking about the sale of giving weapons to Saudi Arabia for their proxy war in Yemen. Who also sold weapons to Saudi Arabia for their proxy war in Yemen? Joe Biden. Guess what? They're the same. When it came to fracking, who did it? Donald Trump. Who also did it? Joe Biden. Who did tax cuts for the billionaires? Donald Trump. Who made it permanent? Joe Biden. And so you're now taking and saying, look, I know y'all hate Joe Biden, but you also need to keep that same energy for your boy Donald Trump, because guess what? He's doing the exact same things, because he's looking out for his rich buddies. He doesn't care about you, right? and you make that apparent. And so you're literally telling, yeah, yes, Holly, yes. Look, if somebody who's like that person goes, oh man, well, Obama was horrible for the country, that's when you go, I agree. And name all the stuff that Obama did. Talk about how Obama, what he did to people like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. Talk about what Obama did to tanking black wealth. Talk about how Obama made the Bush tax cuts permanent. Talk about the Bush tax cut and how they harmed those of us who are poor and working class. And then talk about how that's basically the same thing that Donald Trump did when he did tax cuts for the billionaires. Talk about it. Let people know that none of them are your friend. And talk about how, wouldn't it be nice if you as a worker actually owned the company that you work for, where you had a democratic say over what goes on at your workplace. And in your workplace, guess what? You made your surplus labor. You didn't have to give those profits over to a shareholder or a CEO. You made it yourself. And you got to keep that. Wouldn't that be better? Wouldn't it be better? It's like explaining, like, you're a family man, a family woman, right? Okay. Wouldn't it be better if you made a living wage so you didn't have to spend all that time at work so you could spend more time with your family? Isn't that what it's about? Or you can talk about, well, crime is linked to poverty. So the higher the poverty goes, then guess what? The higher the crime goes. It's the same thing in poor white neighborhoods. Guess what? The police is out there a lot, aren't they? If you go to a more wealthier white neighborhood, is the police out there as much? No. If you go to a more of a wealthier neighborhood where there's a lot of black people, if there are any neighborhoods with more wealthier black people, are the police out there as much? No. Why? Because poverty is linked to crime. People commit crime against people within the closest proximity. That being said, if you alleviate the poverty, then guess what? That gets rid of the crime. This may not be perfectly gets rid of the crime, but it definitely drastically reduces the crime. Oh, so then if we're not giving all the money to police and start giving it to education, housing, healthcare, and things like that so that people won't commit as much crime, then that reduces the crime. So guess what? Defunding the police is fiscally responsible. Wow! Wow! Healthcare for everybody is fiscally responsible because guess what? Now you're spending less money per capita every single time somebody needs healthcare, and then you're also bolstering everybody's healthcare with preventative medicine instead of just treatment. Now you're starting to cure people, which also means that people aren't spending as much on healthcare, thus reducing the cost of healthcare overall, meaning it's fiscally responsible. Making healthcare, free for everybody at the point of service means that people won't be spending as much money. So guess what? Then they're all able to get themselves educated and we can uplift everybody. Having a more educated populace is fiscally responsible. You can even go there. You can even go here. You can go, Teddy Roosevelt was a conservationist. He did the programs where making it all the national parks. Guess what? Don't you, as a hunter and a fisher, want to preserve that so that you and your kids can go hunting and fishing the way you've done for generations? You can't do that with climate change. Guess what? U.S. military is one of the largest polluters in our world. All we got to do is start doing more renewable energy. And then once we start doing that, we can actually get our troops, because we support our troops. We got to get our troops out of these foreign countries that are guarding these oil fields and these opium fields, because that's all they're really there for. I mean, even Trump said we're there just to get the oil. So then you bring them home, start to go on the war against climate change instead. Next thing you know, number one, you don't have a bunch of veterans that are, they're dealing with things like PTSD. They're not dealing with, missing limbs and, broken minds and emotions. So you're literally supporting the veterans by not sending them off to war. And then on top of that, you're not creating more terrorists, which the United States does, by bombing people in other countries. You're not continuing to keep that perpetual motion, that vicious cycle going. Then on top of that, if we're not continuing, and if we stop the war on drugs, then guess what? You're giving these countries like Nicaragua, Honduras, and all these other countries in the southern part of America, they're not having to worry about these drug cartels. So guess what? They can actually build up their own government, and they won't have to worry about these drug cartels. So guess what? Because the drug cartels aren't making money anymore. And then if they're not making any money anymore and they're able to build up their own countries without the United States having interventions in it, then guess what? Then people are less likely to move, because if they got it good in their country, they're not really going to move. They may come and visit, but they're not going to move. So the amount of refugees coming into this country actually goes down. See, here's the thing. A lot of people really are just propagandized, brainwashed to think that it's the left's problem. It's the left's fault. And really, it's like, no. It's top versus down. And the top has been doing what it's been doing for centuries now. So, yeah. So, and let me address something really quick. Because a lot of people are going to be like, well, a lot of these people are prejudiced and racist and things like that. First of all, if they're racist and prejudiced, they're not even going to want to listen to a word I say. So I'm not even going to be talking to them. But there are people that are sadly and deeply mistaken because they've been propagandized. And if you can move them on that issue, then they can even come to the conclusion that, man, these trans folks aren't an issue at all. They're just the people at the top has just been demonizing them and telling us that we should hate them because of what? They're just trying to live their lives like us. Or these people who are immigrants that are coming into this country, well, really it's our country's fault that they literally have to be refugees to come here so that they can live a better life. That's when these people start to realize, well, holy shit, we were lied to. And then they start to open their minds, even on social issues, and they start to go, well, they're not bothering me, so who gives a shit? Marry who you want to marry. Go ahead. You feel that, you were born, the wrong gender? All right, cool. Sure, I'll use your pronouns. I don't give a shit. Will it be that easy? No. But it's worth a try. And when you apply a class consciousness, you can build that up. I agree, Lady Alex. You cannot force awareness on others. That's true. But at the same time, waking up is a process, right? You can leave little seeds of truth, and then that can germinate and grow. And to the people who just won't listen, Leave them alone. Go ahead. But there are a lot more people who are willing to listen than people who won't. And on top of that, I also want to make a notation. The dude that was talking to him was white. It doesn't have to fall on us black people things. You know, it could be a lot of white people who start to communicate these things too. They could do it. Y'all could do it. And trust me, there are a lot of black people who believe the same things that that other dude believed in. They are. And some they believe in the whole, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Cat Terrell says, that's all I do anymore. I don't try to spend much time on it because I don't have time. It's not my job. Yeah. Actually, that reminds me of something. I'm a I wonder if let me see. No. I know this quote, but I just wanted to see it. Okay. Uh mhm. Okay, hang on. Okay. Okay, let me I think I'll just start earlier. Okay. I'm going to share this really quick because I think this is very important. This is from the late Michael Brooks. I think this is important part because he says something that I think a lot of people on the left, especially a lot of us, it kind of goes over our head, but I think it's important to talk about.
Counter to that, because you know, as you sit here, when I listen to you, obviously you present a very good and easily digestible case for socialism, but you know, someone's not going to want to talk to me about that. So how do you engage with the person that maybe is center left or maybe center and just wants to throw your ideas out the window and doesn't want to talk to you anyway?
That's tricky. Okay, so you're not talking. I thought when we were talking about the Cambridge people telling you to get off their porch, maybe that was like a little bit of a different type of voter, different type of thing than center or center left. So let me just make a distinction also between ultra left rhetoric versus actual programs. So one of the things, like, I don't like ultra left rhetoric of any kind.
Well, so
sorry.
Well, so I was saying, I wasn't contesting ultra left programs. I was just saying the rhetoric turns people off. Listening to the idea.
So that's the part I completely agree with you. I think you're totally right, and I think that there is a lot of I think that there's a lot of real problems with how people communicate these ideas. I think they're really limiting. I think they, as I said in the beginning, I said, I want to be the pre-mainstream. I don't want to be a subculture. So I see people sometimes, they go, yeah, we're going to go out there and I'm going to terrorize people with Mao quotes. Like, I don't know, like, what are you talking about, right? Like, and I think that part of that honestly does actually, like, that stereotype of, effete liberal or whatever, that has a lot of origins behind it. There's problems with that, obviously. But like, yeah, it's a problem that the left has basically for decades been essentially only on college campuses in a certain way. That's a huge problem. That's a problem. There's a specific type of social training. There's a specific type of rhetorical strategy that doesn't work on most people. That's another thing that why I really would strongly distinguish, because between social habits and rhetoric versus substantive rights. Like, you see this in groups. If somebody came to a group and said, I'll help fight for Medicare for all with you guys, but I don't want gay people here, we would say, no, you can't. No, we don't do that, period. Now, if somebody comes in and they say, hey, I want to work for Medicare for all with everybody in this group, and I thought this Bill Burr podcast was pretty funny. And somebody's like, wait, we need to process that for 15 hours. Disaster. Alienating, embarrassing, weird, not helpful. So I would make a very clear distinction between program and rhetoric. And I think also, by the way, like the socialism word, like back to your guys' concerns about Bernie winning, I'm hoping that Bernie talks a hell of a lot more about FDR than socialism over the next couple of months.
Now, at that point, I mean, it gets to a point where, FDR definitely had his issues. But there's a certain point that it's not long. I just wanted to get to. Mhm. I should have. I should have. I should have looked at this before I went on live, but I'll just quote him because it's taking too long. But he said, "Be kind to people, but be ruthless to institutions." That being said, it is part of our duty to really show that kindness, so that, because here's the thing, here's my issue: kindness does not get shown to people from the owner class. They don't show kindness. Kindness does not get shown to you from the oppressor class, because they're oppressors. From the capitalist class, they do not show kindness. So if we do, and then we do it in a way that we make sure that we show the people in a kind way, okay, you've been lied to. And then we show, okay, so this is what we agree on. This is what you've been, lied to on, and here's why. Then you have the opportunity to move that person to go, yeah, I think everybody should have health care. Well, yeah, I think everybody should have education. Well, yeah, I think housing is a human right. And then they're willing to join you in the streets to do it, to get it. That's a victory. That's a victory. If you can get somebody who's white to say, you know what? I thought we were under attack in this country, but we were just lied to by the elites. And from what we realize is you guys have been under attack the entire time. And they're willing to suspend and not center themselves and continue to keep going and fight with us, you know, and to say, you know what, that white supremacist type of thinking was just the elites trying to separate us from each other. I'm gonna leave that out the window and I'm gonna fight with you guys. That's a victory. Now, are they gonna be perfect in that? No, by no means. But if they're working towards it, hey, welcome. Let's push towards that. So yeah, so that's basically what I was trying to find. You know, be kind to others, but be ruthless to systems and institutions that are oppressive to us, so that we can change them from the bottom up. Yeah. So yeah. Oh, I need to go to. Let me go to. And, I need to go to our poll. I know I referenced this guy earlier, but I found it. I think this is good to start to end with. This was a few years ago.
The rent is too damn high party. People are working 8 hours a day and 40 hours a week to some a third job. Women can't afford to take care of their children, feed their children breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My main job is to provide a roof over your head, food on the table, and money in your pocket. This is politics as usual. Playing a silly game. It's not going to happen. The rent too damn high movement, the people I'm here to represent can't afford to pay their rent. They're being laid off right now as I speak. They can't eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Listen, someone's stomach, child's stomach just growled. Did you hear it? Got to listen like me.
Okay.
Let's
Mr.
talk
McMillan.
about the issue.
Mr.
People can't afford to pay their
Cuomo,
rent.
30
Stop.
seconds for you, sir.
Rent is too damn high. As a karate expert, I will not talk about anyone up here because our children can't afford to live anywhere. Nowhere. There's nowhere to go. Once again, why? You said it, the rent is too damn high.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Mr. Cuomo.
First, I'm with Jimmy. The rent is too damn high.
Oh, please, you don't
Rent
believe
too
that.
damn high, party fee. If you want to marry a shoe, I'll marry you.
Is he wrong though? Is he wrong? Yes, George. He's a karate expert. He probably is, you know. But yeah, the rent is too damn high. It's been too damn high for a long time. But yeah, I do want to get to our poll. Okay, so let me share my screen just to see the poll results. There you see. Okay. Oh, no. Wait. All right. Oh, nope. All right. Okay, so it says 273 votes. Has your rent increased more than 10% this year? Yes, 59%. No, 41%. So yeah, 60% yes, 40% no. Now, has your rent increased more than 10% this year? So yeah, I mean, for the majority of us, it has. And the big question is, can we afford it? Like, not really. No, there is no way that a lot of us can afford it, and we can't keep doing this. So, unfortunately, that's the way it is. And tenant unions help. Mutual aid can help. Um, you have CJ's Mutual Aid Forever. You have mutualaidhub.org, which is a great website to point you to mutual aid so that we can help people. There are groups that literally, I think that we should have more groups um, that can pay for, lawyers to, help tenants to go to, court for evictions so that they can fight it. Because a lot of times when, you go to court for evictions, then you can't fight for yourself because number one, you can't afford a lawyer. Number two, a lot of times we work too much. We don't have time, so, and then, affording the lawyers damn near impossible. So you can help people with that. I've seen some groups literally chain the doors of courthouses so that landlords can't even get to court. So then the case gets dismissed because they're late because they can't get through the door because it's locked. So, it's just interesting how, people get helped, you know. So, but yeah, the system is it's just horrible. So, but yeah, so I really don't have much else to talk about because I just wanted to bring this up because it was just something that was on my mind. I'm literally going through this. You're literally going through this. So many people are continuously. And I just, number one, I want to say that we're with you, and, the whole thing about, um, meeting people where they are as far as letting them know, you know, how they're lied to and, what they're going through and saying that, these elites don't care about you guys either. I want to give a shout out to all my fellow members at RBN because they've been doing the damn thing. What does Sabby always say? She said it's about class. That's what it's been about. Nick will tell you that he talks to, right wingers all the time. And he moves them to the correct position by revealing that these people, they don't care about you. And they've been lying to you the whole time. CJ talks about it's about class, and he's been on point on that. Rome will literally record a conversation that he has with somebody who's conservative, and he will be like, look, they're messing your money up because they're trying to steal your labor. They don't give a fuck about you. And Rome will talk about it. So I just want to give a shout out to all my fellow RBN members because they're literally class conscious and they do it on an expert level. And I am so proud of my comrades at RBN. I'm learning from them daily. And so I just want to thank all of them from the top and bottom of my heart for continuously teaching me. It's a privilege to be among them. So yeah, on my channel, I just finished. I think it's going to be uploaded tomorrow. The latest reading of Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti on my channel. So if you guys want to go to that. Also, Blood in My Eye by George Jackson is up on Rockfin. This is a great book. I'm going to tell you, and I said this to CJ, this book reminds me of CJ and Rome. If you guys want to read a book that's very CJ and Rome-esque, boom, Boom! It's on my Rockfin channel. Go ahead, look it up. Blood in My Eye is too spicy for YouTube, but it's great for Rockfin. Go ahead and go to my Rockfin channel to listen to me read about it. And if you have not subscribed to our Patreon, please make sure to subscribe to our Patreon if you like what you're watching. Also, click the notification bell. And have you guys liked the stream? Actually, let me do a like check because I know CJ's always doing a like check. Let me do a like check. If I can, gosh, let me, okay. Stop it. Okay. We're at 296. Can we get like 10 more likes on the stream before we right before I go? Hang on. Thank you all so much for continuing to watch. Let me make sure that I didn't miss anybody on Rockfin. Oh, let me get to a couple of these comments on Rockfin too, because I want to make sure I get to these because these are some good comments. Y'all be doing the damn thing on Rockfin. Oh, wait. JB, get it together, man. All right. Pop out. There we go. Give it to me, baby. Give it to me. Give it to me. All right. Shout out to you, Lady Alex says hello, comrades. Maria Lee says owners sold the house. We had to move out our rent, and our rent doubled from $1,200 to $2,500. Ooh, yikes, Maria. Ouch. Doubled the rent? It's horrible. Free Thinker, so good to see you, says it's kind of sad more people don't watch the show on Rockfin versus YouTube. YouTube ain't your friend, just saying. Thank you for that. Also, Free Thinker, thank you for the tip on Rockfin. Free Thinker says, I love your passion, sincerity, and common sense, JB. Thank you for all you're doing here. Thank you so much for that as well. And, Revolutionary Blackout is also on Rockfin. So if you guys want to give us a follow on Rockfin, definitely. So, all I got to say is, continuously, communicate to people that they have more power than they realize. Let them know that, there are things that we can do, and if there's somebody that's running third party, I know a lot of us, are like, we don't even want to support a candidate or anything like that. But if you know somebody that's third party, that are fighting, for things that are like nationalized rent control, housing for all, housing first policy, things like that. I'm sorry, rent control, housing first policy, at least check their box, if anything, to let them know, so that, when, if you do end up voting, check their box, and vote for them if they're fighting for things like, healthcare and housing, education for all, because even if, it doesn't work, at least you threw the spaghetti against the wall, if in case it's stuck, so, but water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Kind people are my people. gosh. Finally. Yes, my computer froze. But my apologies, everybody. Anyway, forehead kisses. Love you. Bye. God, I need a new computer. Oh Lord. Forehead kisses to every single one of y'all. We're saying some Marvel style ending. Damn technology. Anyway, forehead kisses. Love you. All right. Deuces. Wait. Gotta do it right.